I'm Dr. Joshua Williams, and I approve this message.
This is Alan Diskin. With us today is Dr. Joshua Williams. He's a clinical psychologist who has been treating patients in this area for over 30 years. About a year and a half ago, he put on another hat. He filed to become a Democratic candidate for the Tennessee 2nd Congressional District seat. Many of our listeners have only known one person in that seat, Jimmy Duncan. After 50 years of Duncan in that seat, it is open for the first time. And Dr. Williams, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background.
Alan, it's great to be here with you. As you said, I've been a psychologist in this community for 30 years. I actually came here about 40 years ago to get my doctorate in psychology. While there, I met my wife, Lori. Before coming here, I was a high school teacher in an inner city school. I've also lived on a dairy farm. I'm probably the only candidate running who knows how to milk cows and showed cows in the 4-H in the past. I've had a rich lifetime, one where I've truly had the blessings of people helping me as I came along. I came from a fairly troubled family, and I was very lucky to have teachers and neighbors and relatives who helped me along the way. And so my lifetime has been modeled by these people in terms of passing things forward.
You have a real love of people. So this comes from your background, I imagine. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, you know, as I said, I came from a pretty troubled world, and my life's been a struggle. And at one point, I actually left where I was living as a kid and moved on to a Mennonite dairy farm. I mentioned that. And living there, I saw people who knew how to what we call walk the walk. They took in a troubled kid and took them in as one of their own. My lifetime has been filled with people doing the same thing, and many of your listeners have had similar experiences where people have reached out to help them along the way, and they've made the best of it and hopefully have learned a lesson, a love of people, an understanding of how kindness works and how it's paying it forward is a two-way street.
Now, our station takes great pride in playing alternative music. What do you think about that?
I think alternative music is often an emblem or emblematic of social change, of changes in values in our community. And I have loved music all my life. I don't know if it was misfortune or fortune of having to play the violin as a small kid, but when I was 12, I went to a pawn shop and bought my first guitar. And so I've been active in music all my life, listening to folk music as a kid, playing the blues. And when I was a young man, alternative rock was the stuff that kept me going. I mean, it was where I felt a part of a community and felt like I had kindred spirits. So I'm all about alternative kinds of music. I love free expression in music. I think it's one of the most beneficial ways of communicating that we have. So I fully support music. I'm in tune with it.
What are some of the biggest issues that you hope to confront in Congress if you are elected?
You know, I have been running for about a year and a half, and everywhere I travel in East Tennessee, people tell me that their biggest concern is access to health care, affording health care. I have patients in the hospital who are crying in pain, wondering if they're going to survive, and then worried, more than worried, they're terribly anxious that if they do survive, that they may be bankrupt, may lose their homes, that their families may fall apart. They are devastated by the costs of the health care we're receiving. So as the only health care provider running for this seat, I find health care is the number one issue that we talk about. Another issue we talk about a great deal are jobs. And when we talk about jobs, the governor is very proud to say that we have the lowest unemployment rate in the country. What he doesn't tell you is we have the highest per capita employment at minimum wage, which means that people are working full-time, even 2 jobs, and still living below poverty. So when I say I'm for jobs with integrity, with quality of life, and a $15 minimum wage, which would just barely get you above poverty at this point. To have those jobs arrive here, we need economic development. Economic development means attracting employers, companies, factories that would pay these living wages and make good careers for people living here. To attract those companies, we have to have the best health care. There's really so many things that interact. Our schools have to be second to none so that people want to move their companies here because of the quality of life. So we have health care, we have job creation, economic development. The environment is always a big issue for me. Campaign finance reform is huge. All the things that we're for, parity for women in the workplace, civil rights, equal rights, all of these things will never be achieved as long as big corporations get to pay for the legislation that comes out of Washington. So we need campaign finance reform. I always joke, the Supreme Court had this thing called Citizens United that said corporations have the same free speech as people. And I like to say that I'll believe a corporation is a person when Texas executes one. You just don't see it that way. One of the biggest problems we also have that Congress needs to step in on is opioids. As a healthcare provider in the hospitals, I deal with opiates, death, sickness, addiction, addiction, the devastation of families on a daily basis. And we are not taking any meaningful steps thus far to address the immediate problem and the long-range problems for solving this. So those are some of the biggest concerns that I would look to approach in Congress right away.
What sets you apart from other candidates running? Why should people pick you from those who also are running for office?
I think that a comparison is always useful, and I'm glad we have a competitive field. There are 3 Democrats running, and I think I compare favorably. I think you look at my history, my personal history. I know about education because I've been a high school teacher, and I'm the son of a high school teacher and an elementary school teacher. My mother was an elementary school teacher. I know about education. I know about healthcare. I'm the only healthcare provider running in the entire field. I'm also anything but a career politician. I've had a wonderful career treating patients for 30 years in this community, both in my office and in all the major hospitals here, in medical beds. So when I go to Washington and a piece of legislation comes to my desk, I'm the one who will be able to ask, how will this affect families? How will this affect single-parent families? How will this affect schools and teachers' ability to teach? How will this affect people's ability to make a living or even eat? How will this help them get to their doctor, afford the care, and make sure that the quality of care is as good as it should be? So I am uniquely qualified by my life experience working in this community and being civically engaged over the years, in contrast to almost everyone else running, whether they're career politicians or people who have mostly written policy in their lives. I have been living in the trenches with the rest of us, and I know what a real life looks like.
Well, Dr. Williams, we appreciate you being with us today, and we thank you very much for your time.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much.